I see a Marine laying there, and I see a puddle of blood. And I could see that I could make my way through the tree line and the rock piles and get close enough to the Marine that I could just jump off and try to pull them out. Where these guys would have to run, do an assault, frontal assault, and the same results would happen. I told the guys I'm going in. They opened up on the machine gun. Ta-da-da. So I ran in. I started patching them up, and boom, I got hit in the back. I got hit right in the back, knocked me out. I'm laying on Rodriguez, and I thought, oh man, it's over. I couldn't even move. I was paralyzed.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served war zone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we hear the combat story of Danny Hernandez, a Vietnam veteran who served as a Marine rifleman in Operation Utah in March of 1966. Danny would later be awarded the Silver Star, and there is currently a push to have that upgraded to a Medal of Honor, as we will hear about shortly. Danny came from the rough streets of East LA, and after Vietnam would return to be a committed community activist and mentor for many of the kids who are not as fortunate as he was to find a successful way out. The Silver Star was certainly earned, as Danny was shot twice while providing medical aid to a stranded and wounded Marine on the battlefield, refused to be evacuated, and then killed several enemy soldiers as they flanked the casualty collection point that Danny had just been sitting in. Danny's work on mentoring and building the community in his hometown are inspiring, and you can't help but laugh as you hear some of the stories of the Marine Corps back in the Vietnam era. His story is documented in his book titled Silver Star, An American Story, in much greater detail for those who are left wanting more. I hope you enjoy this densely packed but also lighthearted combat story from the Vietnam era as much as I did. Danny, thank you for joining us and taking the time to share your story today.
Thank you.
So we were put in contact by Hubert Yoshida, who we had interviewed in this podcast almost 2 years ago now, one of the earlier ones, distinguished Marine who fought in Vietnam, very interesting childhood on his side. And then he ended up, the reason I connected with him, he was writing on Operation Utah, this significant battle that you know well. And just a few months back, he said, hey, Ryan, you need to interview Danny Hernandez. You have to sit down with him and hear his story. It's really remarkable. Silver Star, the courage, and not just that, but also what you've done since your time in service, being so dedicated to the community. So I was hoping, because at the tail end, we hear about the community side. Can you talk to us about Danny growing up and the community aspect of that?
Yeah, I was born and raised in the inner cities of Los Angeles, first South Central Los Angeles, and then the East Los Angeles area, mostly East Los Angeles area. And was basically driven from the out in the streets. I was kind of mowed street life. And when I was getting closer to graduate from high school, there was decisions that had to be made. Would I run around with the neighborhood kids and find a life in the penitentiary, or do I, follow another dream? And the only other dream during that period of time was the Marine Corps. Well, not the military. It was the military. And I remember one night after I had graduated from school, about every Friday we would have kind of a party going on, and I was sitting on the couch, and my uncle Pelon, that was his name, Pelon, was talking to some guy that walked in a uniform. He had this green uniform on, forest green, and every piece of his uniform was perfectly balanced. And I remember looking at him and says, whatever uniform that guy belongs to, I want to become that, And so he talked, my uncle was talking to him for a while, and then he walked over to where I was sitting down. And before his bottom hit the couch next to me, I said, who was that guy? What service does that belong to? And he said, the United States Marines. And I turned around to my uncle. I said, I want to become a Marine. He stood up and he looked at me and he kind of, he's kind of a street guy, was, kind of a bully. And he said, "You could never become a Marine." And I looked at him, I said, "Why is that?" He said, "That's the toughest fighting outfit in the United States." That's all the motivation I needed. The next Monday, I went over to the recruiter. I enlisted, and a week later, I was in San Diego waiting for the little truck to pick us up and taking us to Marine Corps Depot.
So, Danny, when you mentioned the streets, growing up on the streets like you did, and then you mentioned that maybe the other option for you was the penitentiary. It was pretty rough on the streets at the time?
Well, it was definitely rough. I mean, I had already had my ups and downs, my bruises. I had quit school in the 12th grade because I just wasn't making it. None of the people that I grew up with was built to were studious. We were all more or less straight. Already had my goings with other tough guys, and been laid out on the street, and carried out. I had been stabbed on the side and in the back, and bumper jack. All the stuff that goes with street life, and I knew that the awareness of how to take care of yourself in difficult times. I just didn't have anybody that mentored me to tell me, "Hey, you got to do these things to go to school or college or a trade or anything of that nature." The best mentor I had was the factory workers, and that was like the ideal job, is to, once you get out of school, you go and get yourself a 90 cents an hour job, and that was it. And we went through the system that way. I remember being in elementary school in the 5th grade, and the teacher, Mr. Gomez, I remember him well. He would tell us, "None of you guys have to learn to read and write, man. All you have to do is learn how to learn and the but, and to fill out an application for the factories." And then he would laugh and say, "And if you don't know how to do that, just get somebody to fill it out for you. You'll be able to get into a factory job." So that's kind of my goal in life, was, if not, was, first of all, yeah, get a factory job. I did that during the summer. It was pretty tough, but with the street life comes all the negative stuff, and everybody in the street, was destined to go to jail. I just happened to have a really tough mother that didn't allow that. I mean, she got to me enough, and didn't push me to that extreme. I never wanted gang life to be for me, but it's like a quicksand. They'll bring you in. So at 18, you got to make a decision. Are you going to sit there with all the guys and just waste one day after another, just letting your life go, or do you do something? And that when that party came up, that's when I decided that I was going to do something. And it was because the role model I had, my uncle, that was, teaching us how to be street minded. So,
do you think that there's a part of your uncle, when he said that to you, like you couldn't make it, that he knew that would motivate you to want to do it and maybe get you out of that situation?
There could have been. You see, my uncle, I have always had in the back of my mind that me and my uncle were going to get it on. That was going to be the ultimate fight I had, because I remember when I moved into the projects, Maravilla. That's kind of the toughest. That's like the Watts in East LA. He came. I was 8 years old. My sister was 6, and my brother was 3 years old. And my mother had to work at night in order to make the rent. And at night, my mother used to come to me and says, "Danny, as soon as I go, lock the door and don't let anybody in." And I was a kid, man. And I said, "Well, what time are you coming home, Mom?" And she would say, "At 9." So I said, okay. So I would put my brother and sister to bed, and I go to the kitchen. I just sit there and look at the clock and say, hurry up, 9 o'clock. I want to, because I was scared. There was shooting going outside, the sirens and everything else. And, I wasn't ready to accept all that stuff. So, next thing I know, the next day I would be in the bed, with my brother. And I wonder, why did I get here, And it happened a couple of times. And then about the second week, I asked my mother again, Mom, what time are you going to get home? And she says, at 9. I said, why do you always tell me you're going to be here at 9 o'clock and you never show up? And she says, no, I said at night. And then she looked at the kitchen table, and she's the one that used to pick me up and take me to the bed. So I figured it out. I was hearing her wrong. So what she did was she got my uncle Pelon to come down and babysit us, right? But he was already into street life. By the third day babysitting us, he wanted to get some money for drugs and broke our piggy banks, And I remember seeing my sister and my little brother crying, because that was our money for Christmas. That was our money. That was our toys. The piggies were our toys. That's what we played. We all had different color piggy banks. And I remember looking at him, and I knew I couldn't do anything to him then, but I said, I just said in my mind, one day I'm going to grow up, and then, fast track to that day that the Marines. Yeah, I think there's a lot to do with that, because he's the one that literally took me to the Marine Corps and put me on the Greyhound bus that took me down to San Diego.
So yeah, the Marine Corps uniform also does a lot of speaking for itself. I've definitely spoken to other folks who, whether it's a commercial or the uniform, there's just something they do that others don't, that brings you on board. So with that childhood, as you arrive at the Marine Corps, I think a lot of people go there and they feel like, wow, this is a rude awakening. It's rough here. Was it just, was it easy? I maybe there's a part of me that's thinking it may have been easier for you. Like, this isn't that bad coming off of where I've been.
I thought that, I remember that we got on the bus here in Los Angeles, the Greyhound, and the recruiter comes, and I think there was 10 or 15 of us, and he counts us. And then, everybody was kind of in clubs. They already knew they were going to the Corps. I was kind of a loner when my uncle dropped me off. And I remember the recruiter says, I got the orders here. Who's going to give it to the Marines when you get there? And there was a group of guys, and some guy says, I'll take it. And they give it to him, So we take the ride down the 5 all the way to Long Beach, and he says as soon as you get there, at that time they had those phones that were in where you open up and it's glass all around, and the recruiter gave him a dime. He says, when you get there, call this number, and they'll come and pick you up. So we got to the San Diego Greyhound, and we all get off, and everybody starts saying, let's call the number, man, we want to be Marines and all this other bit, right? And then half of us said, no, hey, we're in San Diego. None of us ever been outside of Los Angeles. Let's check it out for a while, So I remember we all went outside of the Greyhound bus, and we start walking, downtown. It's a downtown. So we all start walking. We got about 2 blocks, and everybody starts saying, nah, we're here for Marines. Let's go back. Let's call the number. We want to be there. So I said, we all agreed. Let's go back. So we go back to San Diego, the bus station, and the guy gets the order and puts the dime in, and he dials the phone, and we're all around that booth. We're all anxious to see what the reaction is. Like, what's he gonna do? And he's smiling, and you could tell that he's the big guy in town. He's got to make the phone call, and all of a sudden his face goes like shock. We're looking at him like, what's happening? And we just kind of looked at each other. He hangs up. He goes, they told us to wait in the front and not to talk to each other. They have spies everywhere. So we're all looking. We're paranoid. We go out to the front of the bus station, and we're kind of standing and he says, you got to go to the front and pay attention until this pickup comes and picks you up. So we all stand at attention, and then everybody kind of under breath of their tongue. They must be across the street. There was a naval recruiting station, a Navy recruiting station. Everybody said they're probably looking at us from over there, and the whole bit. We're just totally paranoid. This guy, his face was from pure joy to, I mean, like, wow, what happened? So all of a sudden, this pickup comes, and with the hood over it, and parks right in front of us. He goes, all of you, come on, get in there. And everybody starts to piling into that pickup. And then he says, get off, you're too slow. So we all get off. And then as he says, and I want you in there right now. I mean, he was beeping some words not even your mother would say, I mean, it was like, it just shocked us, and I was 6 foot, I'm 6 foot and I've come from the street and no one's ever told me anything to do. So I'm kind of looking at this guy, and he walks out and he has his Smokey the hat on, he's all tucked out, and he's only 5'7". And I'm saying to myself, boy, this guy sounds like a lion, because he walked right by me and I saw how short he was. So I said, this guy would never tell me what to do in the street. So we all jumped in the truck. They had 2 benches on both sides. And I was the last one to go on. And I turned around and he said, and you F-us and all that, you're going to stay at attention all the way. And I looked down and my street came on. I just started laughing at him. I said, who do you think you're talking to? I more or less tell him, I started laughing. All of a sudden he jumps up, he grabs me by the jugular, man, and he's choking me. I'm going, wow, this guy, like, boom, just like that, everybody's looking at us and looking at me because this guy just really, he has me in the hole, and I'm trying to breathe and all that. And he got my attention, I mean, we went through from San Diego to the Marine Corps recruit bases, and we were standing at attention as they drove in. We were just standing there. It seemed like they hit every pothole they could find, man. We're finding. I mean, they were doing anything and everything to get us off balance, So by the time we get over there, they get out the truck. We come down, get back on. You're too slow. All that stuff starts happening, and it hit home, man. It's like, did I die and go to hell and don't even know this? I really thought, what is going on here? This just doesn't happen, And it didn't stop for the next 3 months, man. That's the way it was, man. I mean, everywhere from getting your, for the first 3 weeks I was there, I had no clue what was around me. You're just following the guy in front of you, right? And we went to a processing. You take all your clothes off, and they jump all over. It goes from this point on, I'm your mother and your father. I'm God, everything to you. You are nothing. And we're looking at these guys, and there's 5 of them jumping up and down the table, and they're telling us, take off your clothes now, and then we go through the process and they start throwing us other clothes, and we have to put on the green civvies and everything else, and we become, jarheads. And all of a sudden we got to put all the other clothes on seat bags, and then they got these boxes and we throw all our stuff, and then they take it away from us. And then they tell, put your seat bag over your shoulder. So I threw my seat bag over my shoulder, and all this chaos is going all around. People are kind of looking who's going to get hit next. There's 5 DIs talking from different positions, and I remember throwing my seat bag over, and all of a sudden all the eyes came to me, all the DIs, and everything stopped. It was like a moment of silence. They all came towards me, and they all jumped on top of the tables. And they looked at me and they said, how dare you hit my commandant? I turned around, there's a picture of a commandant. I guess that was the commandant of the Marine Corps. And when I threw it over, I hit it. From that point on, it became, at that time they got to hit you and everything else. So they were hitting you and everything else. I'm going, I'm trying not to fall because I was scared they're going to start kicking me like they do in the street. I just, and everybody just like turned their eyes away. Nobody wanted any of that piece of the action, And then we get to our platoons, and then it all starts there again, all over again. And it wake you up in the morning. I remember one night probably the third week. No, it must have been about the fourth week I was there. One of the DIs comes and it's about 1 o'clock, and we had just got to bed. And 1 o'clock, DIs come down. His name was Sergeant Morgan. He comes in, he starts throwing racks all over. Get out there, you maggots! Get out there, you this and that, you know. And so we all go outside, and he started making us do push-ups. I mean, push-ups and sit-ups and all this other bit. And then he gets us all online. He says, you know what? I just come from a DI party right now, and they said that you guys think that we're Satans. They think that they say that you think we're this and that. How many of you believe that? Nobody raises their hand, right? We already knew what happens, right? But he says, but I want you to know I have a heart like you. So just tonight, what do you guys want? You know? And I said, one of the guys, I want to call home. And then after he turned around, do you guys want to call home too? And everybody turned around. It seemed pretty safe. We all say, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We want to call home. And he goes, that's fine. All right, everybody, turn to the direction of your house. So we had people going north, south. He says, okay, now start calling home. So we're out there yelling for a half an hour, home, home, home. And then he puts us back, and we start having to do push-ups and sit-ups, and then he takes us back. That was the last thing we ever had with one of our DIs.
That is great. So was there any point there that either that first day or through that first month where you were like, I might need to quit this? Or did you start feeling like, hey, this is where I belong? I kind of like this discipline. This is the mentorship I never had.
Yeah, totally. I that was the first time I really had some discipline put on me with respectable adult alpha dogs that were really, there. And it started happening maybe about the 6th week or 7th week. I remember they came down, and before that, we couldn't unbutton any of our shirts, or we couldn't put our pants into our boots or anything looking like Marines. Everybody was looking like Marines but us. This is the process you go through, right? And they come out and said, okay, guys, you unbutton your top button. We unbuttoned it, and it felt like, wow, I've been here that long. And you got to remember that in those 6 weeks, a lot of guys were jumping the fence, going AWOL. They were just leaving. Every night you would hear people crying, and you say, wow, man, am I going to make it or not, and then when you go to obstacle courses, and you be doing the obstacles, and one of them was getting a rope and going across a pond, and then I remember one guy just stopped. He just says, I'm not going to do it, so they called us all around the guy, and he says he doesn't want to go anymore. And then we all looked, we didn't know what to do. We're all boots, right? And then the DI says, he tells them, listen, all these guys are with you. If it meant that they would all get killed so that you wouldn't go, would you let them all die? And he said, yes. Wow, it hit home, man. It hit home. That's when we knew we had to work as a team, Wow. And we didn't see him around the next day. All these guys are talking about, I'm filtering out. I think we started off with maybe 45 to 50 in our unit. At the recruit, we ended up graduating with 32, 33. Yeah. Everybody either medical or discharge or AW, went over.
What year was it, Danny?
65.
Right. So
65. Everything was free there. I remember one time we were in the 7th or 8th week, we had mess duty, because every week is something different. By the time we were in the 8th week, we had mess duty. And by that time, we already had unbuttoned a lot of our shirt. We were able to starch our pants. We were looking like Marine now. We were really into it, right? So whenever you have like the year before you or the week before you Marines, they're a lot more polished. So whenever you go down the chow line, they wouldn't give you their food, or they would ignore you and all this other bit. And I guess that's just kind of the tradition. So when we took over, we did the same thing, more or less, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, that class didn't enjoy it, man. You know, the 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 coffee the canteens were flying, the testing, and I remember getting cut in the back of my head, right? And so they sent me to the to the hospital with where the Navy guys were, and I remember them sitting me down saying, "Hey, listen, that the DIs do it, we'll get them for you." And I'm looking at these guys like, wow, you know, this was Marines against Marines, you know, and
Jeez.
not, it was, he goes, we know that, we know what they do to you guys in the whole thing. And I'm saying, they only knew, you know, but this was
Mm-mm.
totally just Marines on Marines, and you know,
Jeez.
it was
So, and I know, like I mean, the war is going on in the background, so I could
yeah,
understand why people are
well,
leaving.
the war was starting to go on.
Starting.
It was in that end of that year that Johnson made a commitment to send the troops in. So we got ready for it. Yeah, I mean, it was we were going in as the first division going in to make amphibious landing to really get into a you know, search and destroy missions.
Do you remember that movement into country? What was that like? Did you guys do the amphibious landing when you were there, Danny?
Oh, the whole thing. I mean, everything you see on television. Because remember, we went over as a regiment, you know, for a division. We had been groomed from Camp Pendleton. We went we went aboard ship as a unit to Okinawa. We had training in Okinawa, jungle training. We went aboard ship to the Philippines. In the Philippine Islands, we made a practice amphibious landing. We went over to Vietnam, and we transferred from the troop carriers onto a Amtrak carrier. And that night we looked out there and we saw the you know, all that firework going on, and we were going in. You know, I remember that night before we made the amphibious landing. I was you know, we already had known everybody. Gunnery sergeant was our platoon commander. Captain Ladding was our commander, and Lepori was our lieutenant, platoon,
Platoon commander?
Yeah. Yeah, platoon commander. And so I remember gunnery, Captain Laddie called all my company together and says, "Okay, guys, this is the real thing tomorrow. You know, I just want you to know that all your training is gonna determine that you'll live or not. You know, I mean, they were straight out. They just tell you exactly how it was, right?" And and he said, "I want you to break up with your platoon sergeants and one more time so you can go over what's going to happen tomorrow." So gunnery sergeant takes us over to a corner. I was with weapons platoon. I was a machine gunner, and he says, "Okay, guys, I trained you myself. I know you have it. We'll make it happen. You just keep going, you know, and make sure you don't leave nobody behind, and we're gonna make it happen." And then he says, "Make sure you write home to your parents, you know, let them know that this is real." And then he says, "And also go to the church of your faith, go to the church of your faith, and give your last, be the last time. It might be their last time." So yeah, all that stuff happened, and I remember writing home, man, and went to the bed. I was trying to write everybody, and then the next day, go down that gut that hole where the Amtraks are, and we get in our Amtrak, and we're the first wave to go out, man. I remember feeling the Amtrak like fall into the ocean. It seemed like it never was going to come back up, you know, and then boom, it comes back up. And then we start circling till everybody's on land. And boom, we hit the beach. We hit Red Beach in July, Vietnam. And, you know, we only got a couple of sniper fighters, but we had everything. We had the jets going by. We had the helicopter Hueys. We had destroyers. Everything. We went with 7th Fleet down there, and then we walked through through the sand area and hit the tree line, and then you go maybe 30 yards, and then you hit sand area again, and then the river's beyond that. So once we got after the tree line, we dug our hole, foxholes for the night. On the other side where the other, and that night we got hit. That was the first time that we went into battle. You know, they hit us from the other side of the river, and we were firing back and forth, and the hewers were coming down. You could see the bullets coming down. They were like Christmas lights. You know, every third one was a tracer, so you see them going right by you and everything else. And you know, in about half an hour later, you know, people are start yelling, "He's down!" You know, it's dead, and all this. And you're you know, you're 18-year-old kid and say, what's going on here? You know, I wasn't going to turn 19 till March, you know, and I was already there and 18 years old in January. So, uh, you know, and that was the first time that I smelled death on a, you know, in a large time. You know, I mean, it just smelled so terrible. I mean, like, wow, it was an ugly smell, and from that point on, that became a normal way of small as we got into battles, into operations, and things of that nature. And yeah, it was the first time, and you know, I think we had 3 guys from our company that got that were killed, and wounded a couple more, but it was an ugly smell. It was
Just
a
the
smell.
first night,
Yeah.
literally the first night you were there, Danny?
What?
The first night that you were there, this
The first
happened?
night we were there, yeah, we got in a battle.
Jeez.
Very first night we got in a battle. We stood there, I think, 3 days to let the back come in, and they stood the CBs and the cooks and everything. They started to form the village on the beach behind us. So we had full security. So we stood there, and then once they got everybody in, then they had their own security. They put us in trucks, took us over to the helicopter mag place, and put us in helicopters and flew us into the jungles, man. And we stood there for 45 days straight.
So was that to set up an outpost?
When no, we went at the battalion. We were the first ones. It was to intelligence had said that the division of North Vietnamese had been in Highway 1. They've been building in the jungles. So we were going to go meet them face to face. And, you know, it was called the Double Eagle 1 and 2 with a search and destroy mission. It was all about going after each other. It was all you had, you know. But what ended up for us is they had the same intelligence we had, because you know they're pretty corrupt in South Vietnam. They were telling what was going to happen, so they all came down to the village areas while we were flying into the jungles. And so we had a lot of fights. A lot of them stood up there. We had battles. A lot of our people got hit and all that. But it was mostly the terrain that got us, man. The leashes, the rats, you know, all of the animals. I mean, you know, coming after you. I mean, it was like, where are we at? You know, I thought this is supposed to be paradise, you know, and it was far from that, man. I remember a lot of times the guys used to wake me up. Well, 2 times. One guy woke me up and says, "Danny, did you get hit? Did you get hit?" And I go, "No, why?" And I had blood dripping all through the side of my cheek, and it was where a leash had taken all and had already left the blood going down, you know. And then when we used to cross the river, we used to drop them down, had leeches all around you. You had to either use propellers or cigarettes to knock them off. You know, that was the regular. That was the way of life. And then at night, you had to cover yourself in ponchos, because you know, just dozens and hundreds of rats would run by you. You know, they were going all over the place, and you had to kind of, you know, keep yourself anchored down. Not to mention the monsoon season and everything. You know, guys were they were going back for treatment because they were getting, their toes and their feet were all guys were, and then when the sun come out, people would get sunstrokes. It was just like it was the environment that got a lot of us. I was okay with it until I went to the hospital in Guam, and then they found out I had worms and everything in my body, and I had to, they had to take all that before they patched me up and took me back send me back. But
And you
anyway,
guys, you got there in January, Danny? Is that right? Or July of
Jan-
65? January
January
66?
66, January
Okay.
60. I was in
Jeez.
boot camp in March of 65.
Okay. So,
And then I was in Okinawa in October of 65. And then we left out in January of 66 to make our amphibious landing.
so for those first 45 days when you were kind of forward deployed, just kind of dropped out there, do you remember the first movement to contact you did? Like,
Yeah, I remember it. I remember that we were all up there, and the captain ordered our squad to go out. They had heard movement in a village that was just down the hill. So we went down there, and we spotted the VC. They weren't Arbin. They weren't the hardcore. They were VCs, and they were running with their rifles, and you could see them on the crest of the mountain. And as they were running, I was an A gunner at the time, and the machine gunner was Big David. So he said, "Set up, set up." So he set it up, and I fed him the round, and he starts firing. Da, 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 da. Boom, boom, and you see guys going down, running over the crest of the mountain. They were escaping, and then boom, I seen that David hit one of them, man. Boom, and he went down. And then I saw in the village, two of them went down from a rifleman. So after the battle was over, we had to go and find out, get our numbers. So we went down there, and I remember David and I went to where he had hit that guy, and it was a young guy, man. He must have still been in his teens. Man, I felt bad. I really like wow, what am I doing? Why are we doing this? And David. I just turned around. I guess I justified it by saying, "Well, it wasn't me that pulled the trigger; it was David." I don't know. You try to justify things down there, and but those were the first days. By the first week, everything went. It was either them or you. It really came down to you. Either them or your friends. It really came down to a brotherhood that had to keep, to fight for each other, and that's what it really came down to. We already had developed a brotherhood in Okinawa and the Philippines because we drank and laughed together, and we got thrown the break together. We got all that stuff together, so we were already part of a brotherhood. But when you're fighting and the blood is then you become blood brothers. You're not going to let anybody go, and that's basically it. So yeah, that happened 45 days, man. In and out, battles everywhere, but we didn't get into a major battle till March, until Operation Utah.
so just before jumping into that, Danny, was there any point in time through that initial 45 days where it made you think about the streets again, where you grew up, like in a different context at all?
Well, I always knew that the streets had made me sharper in listening to things that were going on, or
Oh
body.
yeah, I bet.
I've always felt like I had the upper hand for most Marines there, because I would see them go in a straight line. Before I could stop them, I'm saying, "What are you doing that for? Get the cover, go through the tree line, go through this." But I wasn't. I was a PFC at the time, so I couldn't really give them orders. I would take care of us, but not to that form. But yeah, I think the whole reason for me living was because of that. That I had that other sense of what it was like. I had gone through all. I had gone through bullets. I had gone through 8 guys knocking you down, kicking you, and trying to get the best of you. I've gone through, you know, and sometimes I didn't get that because I knew they were there. I could see them chattel, and you make your way the other way, or you run
Yeah.
before they come. You know, all those things that you learn. You know, I mean, they become second nature to you. So in Vietnam, that's kind of what it was like there. You know, I mean, you could sense things. There's a lot of chaos going on, a lot of distraction, whether they're animals or whether they're insects and all that. But boom, as soon as you hear a leaf or something of like a human, boom, it just becomes real sharp and you understand. Get ready, man. You start juices find out you're ready. I was always seemed to be prepared to get it going when I had to.
Can you set the context for us for Operation Utah, Danny? Like why did this operation need to be put in place and what was the size of it? And for people who've listened before, we've heard Hubert talk through this, but just for those who haven't heard that, I'd love to set the context for what this battle is about to be.
Yeah, Double Eagle won. And then when we finished Double Eagle won, we were supposed to go find the regiment and the division of in the jungles, and they weren't there. Then as we were leaving, because after that they were going to take us back to Red Beach so that we could finally get some hot food and shower, regroup, find out how many we had. Operation Double Eagle 2 begun because they fought it army of the North Vietnamese on another hill. So they flew us down there. My company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, took the lead on that. We had to go down there, and that only lasted for 10 or 12 days. And then after that, they we did our battles and all that, and it wasn't as heavy. And when I say heavy, we're talking about firefights that last maybe an hour, 20 minutes. Seems like 2 or 3 times a week. You're always booby traps every day. Somebody would get hit with a booby trap or a mine or something like that. The personal stuff, the heat exhaust, and that would be every day, depending on who you were. But we weren't fighting like you saw in Saving Private Ryan. It wasn't one of those yet. It wasn't that or what you see with the Battle of Bulges and all this other. It was not that yet. But I mean, we were salty. We were combat ready by then, and I'm talking about our whole unit, and so after Operation Double Eagle 2, they flew us back. The operation was ended, and they flew us back to Red Beach. We were supposed to get a little R&R for. They said we were anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. So, the first thing you do is the helicopter, they come pick you up, and then they fly you towards the beach. And we had just made an amphibious landing there 35, 40 days prior to, and it was nothing but sand, right? When we started circling that sand area, there's a whole village there, man. The Arby's had built a hospital and built a mess hall and built, like, wow, you can see it flying down. When did all this become a reality? And that became the 1st Marine Division headquarters. So it was a lot of good stuff there. So as the helicopters start landing, in the jungles, you don't see a lot of guys from the companies because we're all going to different missions, assignments, and things like that. And so we might not see them for 20 days or 30. So as we start landing, and the first person we see is Gunnery Sergeant Downey. He says, "Everybody, weapons over here." So we all start going to the areas he's pointing, and as the helicopter, you start seeing, Robert Stamps coming in, Saggio coming in. Wow, man, he made it. We're all proud of it. Everybody's happy that certain people made it, and then there's some people that did make it. And we kind of talk about it as we start forming. So after all the helicopters dropped us off, weapons platoon went and fought a spot. After 1st, 2nd, and 3rd platoon, weapons had its own spot. And they said, okay, guys, we're gonna have mail call, and then you're gonna get hot food. But before you do that, go take a shower. So we all went and put in a line for the showers. And as we started walking in the shower, those that already had taken the shower were walking by us, and their noses they were closing their, we couldn't smell anything, right? We had no idea what we smelled like, but can you imagine what we smelled like at the time, man? So after we took our, well, actually, some of us went to the chow line, and the cooks wouldn't even give us anything. You got to go just shower. We're not going to give you no food till you go take a shower, man. That's how bad we smell. But you didn't know it until you took the shower. And then you figure, what is that smell around, and then you realize that was you at one time, it was bad. It was really bad. So we were there for a day and a night, and we were starting to enjoy ourselves. It's same routine. Some guys would write letters, other guys would put the music with, some guys went over to H&S and got their sea bag and got their record players. And for Chicanos like me and guys that listen to a lot of music, I remember Johnny Enriquez getting his song, and at the time it was oldies but goodies for us, and he's putting oldies but goodies. We're out there dancing, laughing, and they had a beer call and the whole bit, so we're laughing, having a great time. And then as you walk around the area, some guys are in the corner writing letters, and other guys are in little meetings and the whole bit. And the next day we get up and we have a little football game, and just like all the battles you have in the Marine Corps, the guys were from Michigan wanted to be the Lions, and the New York wanted to be the Giants, and I was from LA and I wanted to be the Rams, so we had to flip and fight, and we finally came out with the Giants and the Rams, and had battle again.
I bet it was competitive, was it?
Oh wow, man! It was tough, man. Those that didn't get hurt at the branches and the rocks that you fell on sure got bruised up when we went against each other, and so it was a good day and a half. And then the next day you start hearing rumors that that we're going out again, and we're saying, but we have a week here. What had happened is all the North Vietnamese army we were supposed to do battle up in the jungles had come down to the villages, and the 36th Regimental North Vietnamese Army took control of the village in Nai Hai, and what happened is there was some patrols there, and they just destroyed the patrol, and then they sent over another platoon, and they got hit pretty bad. And by that time in headquarters, they're talking about, hey, this is more than just a couple of Vietnamese, having battles. It's getting pretty tough. We better start rounding people up. So I think that's when Hugh was one of the first ones to his battalion made a landing on the south side of Hill 50, and they started having really heavy battle. And then I think towards the east side, 1-4 started having heavy battle. And here we are in Red Beach. We have no idea what's going on, especially from my rank. I was still, right? All of a sudden they start, get as much rounds as you can, start loading up. We hadn't even had enough time to put our bags together, and all we were doing is getting as much weapon, and the helicopters start coming in, and they just start throwing us into the helicopters. Wow. Right? And boom, man, they fly us over around Hill 50. You could see the battles going on. You see guys falling and everything. You go, wow, this is real. This is, you can't get any more real than that. It was like, it was just real. And we were going into that. We were going into that whole kill zone, and we knew it.
And no prep, really. There was no like mission planning for you guys. There wasn't hey, let's take a day. There was no time.
I didn't understand what you said.
Oh, sorry. It sounded, Danny, like there was no mission prep. It was really like get on the helicopters and get in there.
There was no mission prep from the bottom all the way to the general.
Wow.
decision. I mean, this came as a surprise to everyone, I mean, that they had been down there. It just, I mean, it was like, that's why they were doing piecemeal. Seventh Marines go in there, fourth Marines go in there. We better get the third Marines. So, everybody was, I mean, it was like, it's getting bigger, bigger, bigger. So by the time we got in there, we had 3 battalions. We had the Army down there. We had the RVs. We had, I mean, we were almost building up to a regiment style from different spots, and as you flew over, you could see this. You could really see that it was happening, and for me as a PFC, you have no idea what the plan is. All you're gonna do is basically you have to, take orders. And I remember we landed the back of a hill on the north side of Hill 50. Hill 50 was like in the middle of rice paddies. They had rice paddies from our hill north down to the south of Hill 50, and then rice paddies from the north of Hill 50 to the rice paddies where Hugh's battalion came in. And then on the east or west side is the 4-1. You could see rice paddies. So, the hills are anchoring rice paddies so water can go down and feed them. And then villages are anchoring or on the sides of the rice paddies because they're the ones that work it, right? So I remember us landing, and then they made us climb over the hill, and we were going to become the unit that was going to make sure no one escaped, right? So as we get over the hill, we're seeing these Phantom planes throwing their bombs and napalm, and we see artillery coming in, popping it all on Hill 50 and everything else. And it was like being prepared for that big battle that everyone had always seen on television and everything else, right? So I remember when we got to the side, there was caves in the villages on the hill that we were in. And then Avila, who was the sergeant, he called me over and says, Hernandez and Rodriguez, get your 2 guys and go down the hill. You're going to be an outpost to make sure nobody comes on us. So I remember going down to the hill, and I set my gun on a tripod. And I don't know how I became a gunner now. And now that I think about it, I was a gunner by then. So I had my tripod, and you always have riflemen taking care of your guns. So they were on both sides. And I'm looking at all this stuff, and I'm saying it's the 4th of March 4th. And I'm talking, I'm saying, and I tell my A gunner, damn, man, I'm not even going to reach my 28th birthday before I get killed, I only had like 7 days left before my birthday. And then one of the riflemen, his name was Rodriguez, he said, were you born on March 11th? And I go, yeah. He goes, I was too. So we started talking, and I go, wow, that was the icebreaker for a while, and then he started talking about Texas. He's from Texas, and I'm from LA. And he seemed to be a really humble individual, and I was enjoying the conversation we had. And all of a sudden, man, we started getting hit with incoming. So they called us up, get up here, the Avila said, come on, hurry up. So we all had to run up and get into the caves, and they started exploding all over us, right? And we found out it was our own guys that threw it on us, They missed the coordinates. But only one guy got injured, but he had just a wound. And then the next morning, they wake us up maybe about 6 o'clock, and we start making our way all the way down the hill. And by 8 o'clock, we're down the bottom of the hill where the flatlands that connects to the rice paddies. And then they said, get online. So we all got online. And as far as I can see to my right, and as far as I could see to my left, nothing but Marines. We were going to make an assault to Hill 50 that was about 100 yards in front of us. And then to our left, with one of the villages, to our right was the other village. And on that village, my company took the middle, and Lima was taking the right village. And we all just got up, and on that line, I could see Gunnery Sergeant Downey, I could see Thompson, I could see all of the staff NCOs. You know, the guys you admire because they're the guys that know everything. You know, well, you think they know everything. Well, they did. You know, they were a lot better than the officers because the officers had not had any battlefield. But you see them, and they're the guys that had trained you in Okinawa, and you look back and forth, and that day you're going to be unequal, right? Because we're all going on the same line, man. We're all heading towards the same thing. And it's all up to you as an individual now, right? So we start walking towards Hill 50, and we get to the rice paddy. And then the rice paddies, there's columns. And then we start making our ways into the columns, you know, by fire teams. Start going down the columns. And then we just keep going forward, like anything else until the first fire. And we keep going fire, and we still see the phantoms coming down, blowing down. We see the tanks on the side throwing dirt stuff, and we hear artillery coming from afar. You know, it was just continuation of everything going. By the time you got to the middle of the rice paddy, you were smelling the napalm. You're smelling all the stuff of all this powder is going on, and then all of a sudden, a squad of the Mike company had to go through the village as the rest of us went down the rice paddies, and they got hit. It was the regiment headquarters of the 36th Regiment headquarters of the North Vietnamese Army. They had walked right on top of them. So they started to get hit, and here we are in the rice paddy. And they opened up, took out the stuff, started the machine gun fire, started throwing the grenade, and started throwing throwing everything they had on us, and it just started knocking our whole structure off. The NCOs were trying to maintain control, but you had, like myself and my 8-gunner on an island all by ourselves. You had a unit that was, everybody was getting shot at, and we're trying to jump over each column to get to the village, and we're all on mud, and then we're getting hit from the other village. So we're in the crossfire, and then we're getting hit by Hill 50, and we're just trying to survive just to get somewhere, So by the time me and my 8-gunner, Severson, got to the edge of the village, we could see that the North Vietnamese Army in their uniform start to retreat, start to go back, because there was riflemen that were holding the front part of it, and then they just moved back to where the machine guns were to protect the machine guns. And so I set my gun up, and I just happened to be in the middle where there was a machine gun to the right of me and a machine gun to the left of me, right? And as I set up my machine gun, I don't know what enemy machine gun I should shoot. I see on to my right, I see Gunnery Sergeant Downey and H&S were there, and I see them dragging the wounded out of the kill zone where that machine gun had been killing a lot of our Marines. And then to the right, I see my Marines behind a big rock area looking at the kill zone, where a couple Marines were still there because when they had got hit. So when I saw Gunnery Sergeant Downey, I could see that our body language had been, and he had showed me that never go after a machine gun straight ahead, try to get from the back. He had trained us that way. So when I seen him reorganizing behind the bushes, I knew what he was going to do. He was going to go after him, so I decided to support him on that. So I just kept shooting that area, and then the next thing I know, boom, it's silent, right? So I turned around to get to the next machine gun that was hitting the ones on the right, and I only had like 2 bullets that and it was over, right? And then, but I could see all the Marines that were behind the rock area kept yelling, "We'll get to you! Stay there! Stay down! Stay down!" They were giving them singles, putting their hands up and down, "Don't come up," and the whole thing. and I'm trying to make out what they're talking to, and I see a Marine laying there, and I see a puddle of blood, and when we were in Operation 1 and 2, guys would die if you wouldn't get them out in time. They just die of bleeding to death. So I could see that I could make my way through the tree line and the rock piles and get close enough to the Marine that I could just jump off and try to pull them out. Where these guys would have to run, do an assault, frontal assault, and the same results would happen. So I got their attention. I told them I was going to go down there and get them. So when I get right by him, it turned out to be that wounded Marine was PFC Rodriguez, the guy that was the same birthday as me.
Oh.
He turned his face. I go, wow. So anyway, I singled I told the guys I'm going in. They opened up on the machine gun. Ta-da-da. So I ran in. I started passing them up, and boom, I got a hit in the back. I got hit right in the back. It knocked me out. I'm laying on Rodriguez, and I thought, oh man, it's over. I couldn't even move. I was paralyzed, and me and him are right there, like looking at each other. And he was hurting. I mean, I don't even know if he was looking. I just know that he was moaning and everything else. So, as the Marines, and I think they were the second Marines, second squad, they started yelling, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm okay. I'll get him up. I'll get him." So they start shooting again. I finally got him up, put him over his shoulder, and got him as close as I could to where they were at. And they pulled us both behind the rock area, right? And they start patching us up, and they put tags on me and him, and then they took us down to where the medevac zone was at, and that's when I first saw all the Marines that were either wounded or dead. I started seeing that Sergeant Anderson was lifeless. I saw Mulholland was lifeless. I saw Johnny Enriquez that had a wound on the arm. He couldn't move at all. I just started seeing all the guys that you were with in Okinawa and all that. I just started seeing that that's where they were at. I mean, they were ready to be lifted up, but the action was so hard or so dense that helicopters couldn't land. And here I was with a wound on the back of in the back of my. On my back where the bullet had knocked me down, but I could still move. So I decided to go back into the battle. I just got a rifle that was laying there and went back in. And that's when I saw my A gunner. By the time I got to my A gunner, he had already filled all the machine gun links together, and he had the machine gun full of rounds again. And so we were there in support shooting, and then a sergeant ran across and he says, "Come with me, everybody. I need all of you to come with me." And we're listening to him, and he's saying they're going to attack the medevac zone, and we got to stop them up in the north part of it. So as the A gunner jumped up, he had a rifle at Severson. He jumped up and he started to leave with them. I heard something shoot in the back, ta, 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 ta. And then I heard people say, cover that hole. And then I hear people say, "Oh my God, this shit." And I'm saying, that came from the medic zone where I was at. I knew where it was at, right? So I grabbed my gun and I walked, I made my way over there, and where all the guys were wounded, they were behind a rock area, and then we had a tree line, to cover them. And so I got to the tree line and I could see bullets hitting them, and I couldn't see who was shooting. And I was wondering what happened to the sentries and all that stuff, And it seems as though the sergeant had called everybody to go make a stance where he thought they were at, and everybody took off down there. So, I just saw that was going to happen. So I jumped out of that covered area, and that's when I saw the VC running towards the wounded and the other ones coming out of the hole, and I just started opening up, and thank God I made it. Yeah.
So they were closing in on the wounded, basically, on the casualty collection point. The VC were attacking them while the
Yeah,
sentries
yeah,
were
but
diverted.
there was tunnels all over the place. So they came from a tunnel that had no one had known there was an opening there, and they had seen them all there, and they seen them defenseless, and some were still alive, and their I guess their orders was to kill every Marine they could, and at the same time, you know, uh, I just came from there, so I knew exactly where it was at. I knew what the terrain was like. So when I got there, I couldn't see the number of actual North Vietnamese soldiers, but I could see that the bullets were hitting the where the wounded and the deceased were, and I knew that if I didn't get there, everybody would be dead. So I had to jump out and go for it, and as we started fighting, you could, it's just like slow motion, everything seemed like wind blowing by you, and you're shooting, just a real slow motion type thing until he goes down, and then it becomes real again. Then you go where the others are starting to go back into the tunnel. They must have thought I was a madman or something to go after them. I mean, they really literally got scared and started going into the tunnel, So I jumped in the tunnel, and they either blew it up or all the volume of our shooting knocked it down, and it was over with, man. And so I came out of the tunnel. I remember coming out, and I walked about maybe about 8 or 9 feet, and I just fell to my ass, man. I was so tired. I couldn't move anymore. It was over with for me. I mean, I had used every energy I had, And as I started to sit there trying to get my motion back, I started looking. I saw holes all around me. Man, I said, "Oh man, maybe I'm shot," So I reached for my canteen. It's not there anymore. I reached for my ammo pouch. It's not there anymore. And then I see on my flat jacket I have tears and holes. And I'm saying to myself, "Oh man, don't tell me I'm bleeding inside and don't even know it," Because I was exhausted. I wouldn't have been able to move anymore, And it was over with for me. I mean, I was so tired. I mean, I must have sat there for a good 10 minutes before some energy started coming back.
And you had been shot once in the back earlier,
But
so
I had
you had been hit.
I had been tagged to leave. I had been tagged to leave, like General Allen said. Kelly, General Kelly, he came and gave me the award, Silver Star. He says, he had a ticket out of there, and he didn't take it.
Why didn't you take it, Danny? Why didn't you take it?
Well, I saw everybody there. I mean, I wasn't as hurt as everybody else. I mean, these guys were literally, they had nothing left. I mean, I still could walk. I thought, I mean, I could have. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe it was just my street stuff, But it wasn't me to. I don't know. I could not tell you why I didn't take it. There's not a logical reason why I didn't take it outside of the fact that these are my brothers.
Yeah,
they're hurt.
Brotherhood.
Anybody else hurt them, I'm gonna go back out there and make sure nobody comes in there. That's the only thing I can think of at this time, And yeah, it makes sense that because I live my life that way. But yeah, I mean, it was tough. And I remember reaching inside and seeing maybe I was hurting the chest, and I looked for my dog tags, and they're not there. And then I reached a little further, and the only thing I found was a medal. I mean, my mother, before I went because I had 10 days leave before I went to Vietnam, she put St. Christopher on me, the saint that's supposed to take care of you on travel. And he says, whatever you do, mijo, never take this off, never take it off. And I remember grabbing it and looking at it, and that's all I thought about with my mother at that moment, Yeah.
And you were right in the middle of a fight Danny. So like what happens after that? Is it just still chaos
Well,
going on?
battle, they're still going on all around you. It's like a football field. The fighting still in the 20-yard line, the 30-yard line. I'm in the 50-yard line, and so after that, you grab a rifle and you go back out. And when you go back out, by that time, there's an NCO trying to put a team together, and I remember him calling me and say, come on, we got orders. We got to follow the river because there's more gooks down there. And so we got together. It must have been about 8 of us, 8 or 9 of us. A full squad is 12, but we only had 8 of us. So we got to, as we were going up, by that time, a movie crew had come. I guess they had from France or something. They had come and started documenting the battle, not a movie crew, but document the military document. And as we started walking up, they started to go, hey, come on over here, let us tell us your story. Man, we couldn't believe this. Guys wanted us to stop to do something for them while we were having a fight. I mean, if looks could kill, man, they would have all been snuffed out, man. I tell you, man, we gave them the look like, you don't want to mess with us right now, dude. You know what I mean? We all carry. We all know it's fine. We just came from that ugliness, And then as we got up, by that time, nightfall had fallen. Remember, we started fighting early in the morning, then nonstop. Finally, nightfall hits, and I remember we hitting a tree line, and I'm with the first fire team, and so we do the leapfrog. So myself and 3 riflemen run across and put ourselves in position for cover, and the other 5 are in the tree line. And as soon as I sat down and put my gun on a tripod and on bipods, all hell took all over again, man. Tracers, everything you could think of was coming at us again, And the next thing I know is one of the riflemen yelling to because the corpsman was on the other side of the team. He's yelling, Hernandez is dead. Hernandez is dead. And I'm waking up, and I'm waking up and I go, no, I'm not dead, and then he said, not you, Danny, Paul. And Paul's right next to me. He gets a bullet right in the front. He's a rifleman. He had it right there. So as I'm waking up, he said, but you're hit, Danny, you're hit. And I said, I am. And just as he started telling me that, I felt like something dripping all the way down the side of my head. So I put my hand in my helmet, and when I come out, it's all red. And you have the helmet where you just flip it off and on. I must have panicked because I couldn't take it off. And as I take it off and I throw it, I could see it rolling. I could see the hole in the front and the hole in the back. And all the shrapnel from the front went in through my liner, threw it on the side of my head, and pulled it out, to the back. And all I could think of is, wow, I don't want to die here, And they're yelling, corpsman up, Hernandez is hit. I can't get there, you see everything going on, I said, hell with this, my street smarts grew up on me and said, hey, I'm not going to stay here. I crawled all the way over there, He patches me up, and as he patching me up, I'm still 19 years old, get that, right? The only thing I can think of, hey, I got to go get my helmet because I can bronze it, put in the back of my car when I cruise down with Boulevard. All the girls are going to love it, right? That's all I thought of at that moment, I go, wow. And so I crawled all the way back, got my helmet, put it on my canteen, started fighting, and then the next thing I know, man, battle stops, and I'm out, and I'm in a stretcher. It's pitch black, right? Pitch black. And these guys are carrying me through the forest now, taking me to the battalion med. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I got you.
Oh, okay. I don't see your face anymore. Oh, so they're taking me, and boom, and I see this helicopter coming down with this light, and then they throw me into the helicopter. And as they throw me in the helicopter, I'm the only Marine alive. All the other ones were they were dead, except for the helicopter driver and the gunner. And as it takes off, the back of the helicopter, the tail goes up first. All their blood comes on me. Everybody's blood's on me, man. And so I had blood everywhere. I had blood from myself, blood from them, everywhere. So when I get to the mass unit, they didn't know where I was hit.
Yeah.
They just started chopping all my clothes, and I had my helmet. They're trying to take it away from me, and I'm saying, "No, I gotta keep it. I gotta keep it." And one of the guys says, "Give it to me. We'll make sure you get it, because if you don't, they're gonna take it away from you anyway, because you can't take anything out of Vietnam." I don't know what happened to the helmet.
Oh, so Danny, did you black out? Is that what happened at the end of that
Yeah,
fight?
yeah.
You woke up on a stretcher?
Yeah, I was out. It wasn't until I started hearing somebody say Hernandez is dead, and then after I got patched up and went back, I must have blacked out again, because I don't remember anything but them putting me on the stretcher and going, like running through weeds and all that stuff. And then I saw a light coming down, and that's when I woke up again. And then they threw me in the helicopter, and then I could see all the bodies there. And then when they take me to the mass unit, just like what you see on TV, there's a doctor and all that waiting for you. They take you out, they put you on one of those bed things with rollers, take you in. I remember being in the operating room, and I could see all the other wounded Marines, and they're fixing them up and everything else. And then they come to me, and they start pulling out the big pieces of the metal from the helmet. And then I guess I passed out again. The next thing I know, I'm in a big tent, and all the Marines were in there. We had over 200 dead, and I think 300 altogether dead and wounded. So a lot of them were in that tent. And then they took us to an airport, put us in these planes, and took us to the Philippines. And through this, I was in and out. I was in and out. I could see little things going on here and there. And I remember that in the Philippines, I was one of those beds, and they were taking me out of the plane, because then they had to decide whether I went to Japan or Guam. And so as they're pushing me, an officer tells the guy, "Park in the side of the wall, come with me." And they went. And the next thing, I open up while they're pushing me, I can see the lights. It's kind of fuzzy. I thought I was heaven. I really thought I was in heaven. I mean, I thought that's where I was at. And then all of a sudden, this group of people are around me, come around me, and they're trying to give me orange juice, water, and I'm seeing them, and I thought they were all angels. I go, wow, this is what it's like. I really thought that's what I was doing. I mean, weird things go through your mind, right? So I'm thinking, I must be in heaven. This is the angels. And then the guy that at first pushed me comes back and tells them, okay, they want you over there, Red Cross. So it was the Red Cross people. So yeah, they were like so nice. So like, can you imagine you have been in Vietnam where everybody's trying to kill you no matter whatever they're gonna, and then these guys are like, this is the first kind of civilization where people are really giving you from their heart. I mean, it was like, wow. Day and night, day and night. I don't know how, I couldn't handle everything. Nothing had a between, it was either here or there,
Let me ask you this, Danny. Did you realize that day when you woke up and you were back to normal, or as close to normal as you could be, and you're recovering, did you reflect on that day thinking, I don't even know how I'm still alive, or this day, like, my life is going to be different now, this is a life-changing event?
Well, I can tell you the first time I started to see it kind of normal, by then I was in they had taken me to Guam Naval Hospital, and I was in the head wounds, or that ward. And I remember that first day I woke up, I hear this, and I'm waking up, and I'm hearing, so I'm reaching for my weapon, right? I gotta get my weapon, I'm reaching for it, and then my eyes open up, and there's a nurse there. And I said, "Hey, what's that noise?" And she said, "They're B-52s. They're going to blow up. They're throwing bombs in Vietnam." And I go, "Oh, okay." And then I look to the right of me and the left of me, and everybody has, just like me. We all had, the head all bandaged up and everything else, right? And that happened for about 2 days. That noise. And every time I wake up, and then I started to realize that I was in a place that was not combat. And I started asking, what am I doing here? And who are these guys? Are they with 3-1 or they was 7th? And they said, well, some of them are, but a lot of them are from the island. I go, well, they look like brown eyes to me, they look like Americans to me. He goes, yeah, but these are the guys that drive the motorcycles and all that, and crash and all that stuff, right?
Oh gosh.
So anyway, by about the 4th or 5th day, I was starting to feel a lot better, and they put me on the main ward. The main ward was where everybody was at, because I was in a special unit for head injuries. And they put me, and that's when I seen everybody from my company. It was like having a reunion, guys had their arms blown up. Some guys were on wheelchairs. Some guys were on crutches. Guys had scars all across their face. But we all knew each other. Like, wow, man, everybody had their battle wounds. And it was that's when it started to become real for me, that okay, I made it. I made it, because it didn't become any more. There was no more battles going. I mean, there's no more of that. Your juices were ready to fight the next day. And there was movies going on. There was show lines. I remember the first time I was able to go to movies, probably a week after, right? So Johnny got shot in the arm, so they put a sling on him, and he had to wrap it around his head and keep it up all the time. And then Rudy got shot in the leg, so he had a wheelchair. And I was shot in the head, right? So I was all bandaged up in the head. So I remember we were going to go to the movies, and it was down the hall. So I was pushing Rudy, and we're all holding our IVs, right? We're all walking down the hall.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was our IVs. And I looked at this picture, and I start busting up, and Rudy and Johnny start busting up with me. Yeah. And then they say, what are we laughing about, And I said, look at the picture right there. And it was that, where they have the Patriots, where the guy's doing the whistle and one's limping and the other one with a flag and all that. I said, that's what we look like right now, And I go, and we all started busting up right now. But that's what it was. And we got to the, like, those are the little things that, like,
Yeah.
okay, really made sense to us. And yeah, it was a trip, man. It was a trip.
So Danny, I know I can't even believe how fast this time just went. So yeah, I mean, you've gone through hell and back with this, and you mentioned getting the Silver Star, but that doesn't happen for another 43 years, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's a long time before you actually get awarded that. I think it's 2009 that you received that. How special was that moment for you?
You know what? The leading up to that moment felt like, wow, man, I didn't know Marines felt that way about me. Yeah, it happened because of the work I was doing here in the inner cities. I mean, by that time I was probably the most the highest visible organization working with law enforcement and bringing peace to the inner cities with community policing, and I had drawn a lot of A-list celebrities like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Muhammad Ali, and all those kind of people. Maria Shriver, a lot of people would come and support me, and we would be coming on television all the time. Boom, boom, boom. We had big events all the time. And come 2000, the night 2009, I got a call from somebody, and he says, "Hey, are you Danny Hernandez?" And I go, "Yes." And he goes, "Were you in Vietnam?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Were you a machine gunner?" I go, "Yeah." And by that time, he got my attention. I said, "Who is this?" And he said, "It's your brother." And I said to myself, "I only got one brother. It doesn't sound like this guy. So he keeps talking, and boom. I said, "Is this you, Robert? Is this you, Robert Stamps?" He goes, "Yeah." That's it was 43 years. I had never seen him or heard of him, and boom, I could picture
That is
like we were
amazing.
there together, right? So he was a fireman. And he says, "You know what? I've been doing a lot of things. Going to the internet was starting to come out, and I got a hold of our captain. I got a hold of our lieutenant, and everybody wants to see you. And I go, "Yeah, I'm open to all that." So he set up a lunch with Lieutenant Lepori in Santa Monica here in LA. And so I met him down there. I went down there, and we're talking about Tanglefoot Island and all the different things that we did. And then I said, "I got to go back. I'm sorry, I got to go back and work." And Lepori gets up and he says, "Hey, before you go, I want to congratulate you." And I go, "For what?" I take his hand, I'm shaking it. I said, "For what?" He says, "Well, I put you up for a Silver Star." I said, "What Silver Star?" I mean, it just caught me by surprise. I had no idea that they had done anything. And he goes, "You didn't get your Silver Star?" I said, "No, I never got a Silver Star." Now that's 43 years later, right? He's telling me that he put me up.
Yeah.
So he says, "I got to get you that Silver Star. What happened?" So he does the investigation and everything. He calls me back. He says, "I just talked to Chuck Laddie, who was the captain, and he says it must have got lost in between because, Marines don't stay in one spot long enough. So we're just moving. They must have lost it and never got brought up again. Nobody ever requested it. By the time I got back to my company after after Guam, there was nobody in the company. They hadn't company anymore. All our officers had been transferred. All of our enlisted men had been transferred. There was only a handful of individuals that were still there when we initially landed. So it just got lost. I mean, we just lost touch with each other.
Yeah.
So he said, "No, I got to get you a Silver Star." So sure enough, he started working again, man. He started petitioning, and first of all, you had to get a sworn testimony that it was given to you that day. We had to show that we were real, that we were really there. He had to get 3 witnesses that witnessed what I did. He had to go to Mexico to get one from John. He had to go to Pasadena and get. I mean, he did all the work, man. I mean, I gotta appreciate it. So
Wow.
sure enough, in 2009, he calls me and says, "Hey, we got your Silver Star, Danny." And I go, "Wow." So we had it here at the youth center where I work, and people traveled. At that time, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor. He came down. John Kelly was with a 2-star general down in his command with not Camp Pendleton, but boot camp. And he came down to reward it. I had the congresswoman. A lot of people showed up for that, and then we had the community. And it was like I received it, but I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I didn't know what weight it carried. I didn't have a clue. Okay, I got a Silver Star, but I didn't understand it. It took me years to really understand what it meant to all those that had put it in for me. It meant that they saw me as an alpha dog that things for other Marines and saved lives and did all this stuff. But I didn't feel it at the time. I didn't know it. And as time goes on, I feel it more and more because now that I go out and have and do speeches and Memorial Day, I can relive those individuals that I jumped that were going to be evacuated and that were passed away from my company and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really understood how big Operation Utah was until Huber came and we started talking. he really has the handle the size of that operation. He has it down to a point that the second largest battle in Vietnam history by Marines, the most wounded and dead by Marines in battle, the number of days of day and night fighting. He has all that down.
Yeah.
That really makes it, wow, I didn't know I was in something that huge, And then he breaks it even further down. He talks about the enlisted versus the officers and how that worked too. So he's been a real historian and a truth teller.
Yeah. Yes.
Of that whole thing.
Yeah. So just a couple more questions here, and I'll let you go, Danny. One is, how influential was Vietnam for you when it came to being a part of the community again, if at all? Or would you have done that anyway, you think?
No, I don't think I would have done it without being in the Marine Corps. I mean, the Marine Corps made me a man. I would have been a boy all my life and probably been ruined for life if it wasn't for the Corps. If I wouldn't have had mentors that showed you draw the line and your word's good and you make it happen. I mean, I was always truthful and always able to hold my own and never wanted to hurt anyone. But in the Marine Corps, the guys that you go that were your DIs, the guys that went to battle with, the guys, it shows you how much it means to become a man, and especially when you become a father,
Yeah.
In the streets, you always talk, well, I'll die for my neighborhood. I'll die for this. But when you have a kid, hey, you want to live for your baby so that you can grow them up and give them a good life, and yeah, I mean, the Marine Corps, I think is part of the cloth that allowed me to come into the type of work I do. That, along with the streets and the college and all the other stuff. But the Marines are basically, I sit here with a lot of tough people, and you can hold your own, I mean, when that's the way it is, I mean, okay. And you call that a knife? You call that a fight? I mean, come on, come on,
Oh, that's great. Okay. And for people who are interested in more, there is a book, Silver Star: An American Story, that they can get their hands on.
Well, thanks for announcing that. Yeah, it's the battles. It's going into it. I just finished my second book, from chaos to community, and it talks about my ventures here in the organizations and what I had to go through to build them. But yeah, become a Marine, simplify. Oh, everybody out there, simplify, and everyone that ever wore the uniform that had to go to battle, welcome home.
I hope you enjoyed this combat story. This one went by really fast for me. Danny is quite a character. I just love these Vietnam stories. It's the fact that a drill instructor can grab you by the throat. I'm sure that there are a lot of vets who are listening to this who heard that and are like, the good old days. Definitely doesn't happen like that anymore. So it's great to hear the throwbacks like this. So let's get into a couple listener comments. Again, thank you all for leaving these. First one is from Dylan Shira. It's on the Gus Biggio interview. It's a YouTube comment. He says, absolutely loving the Marine episodes. Keep it up. And I had a long stint where we had, Jason Lilly, we had Chris Holloway, we had Gus Biggio. Now we got Danny Hernandez. So we keep them going. We love our Marines. And geez, if it doesn't seem like this to y'all, is it not every Marine either sees some kick-ass poster, movie, or they see another Marine in some sweet looking uniform and it just does it for them. It's just the marketing of the Marine Corps is just so strong. So yeah, I appreciate that comment, Dylan. We will keep them going. We'll have a few more for you as well. And then this next comment was on the Zach Harrison interview from DWR Abauke. It's a YouTube comment. It says, Ryan, just wanted to say thank you for these interviews. You ask all the questions I have on my mind when you have guests like this. You ask, you let them reply. I could listen to these stories all day long. You hear so much of it in the general media, but nothing this deep and personal. A huge compliment. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's, I could not have imagined 10 or 15 years ago thinking I'd have a chance to sit down with a tier 1 operator like Zach and his fellow door kickers. But it's just a peek into a world that none of us have really seen, and from elite caliber soldiers, just the way we have elite athletes, these are the elite of our ranks. So getting to hear what it's like for them on these operations, the op tempo, the experiences dealing with it afterwards, it's special. So I count myself fortunate to be able to hear these. Glad that you feel the same way. Thanks for listening, y'all. Thank you for the comments, the kind comments, and just for hearing these stories. Appreciate it. Stay safe.